Memory makers provide care to adults with early to middle stage Alzheimer's disease or other dementia in a secure, respectful, and welcome environment. Based on a social model, our structured activity includes exercise, craft, socialization, music, brain stretching games, and other meaningful activity. We also offer needed respites to caregivers, allowing them to take a break from their daily stress or caregiving while being assured that loved ones are being well taken care of in a cheerful, welcoming, and entertaining environment. So stop by our facility today at 1558 Skyline Drive in Oxford, Mississippi, where we believe in making memories that will last a lifetime.
Well, Marge, I want to thank you for coming in to Memory Makers and sitting with me and answering some questions about your experiences.
Great, happy to do it.
Okay. Our first question is, what first made you come to Memory Makers for care?
Well, first, I had heard about Memory Makers before COVID because I had some, I think it was a couple of acquaintances, not really close friends, but acquaintances that I knew that worked for Memory Makers or had family members that were going to Memory Makers. And then, of course, COVID happened. So when everything came back and started up again, and Memory Makers was able to reopen, I was already thinking, because Joanne O'Quinn had mentioned it a couple of times and telling me that, caregivers need, respite time for themselves. So that's why I decided, well, let's give it a try.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the challenges sometimes for folks is that first day at Memory Makers and introducing someone to Memory Makers. So how was that for you?
Well, it was it was kind of difficult. Jim didn't want me to leave him. Mm-hmm. It was a little like, kindergarten, I guess. I said, we're going to go to this program and you'll probably like it because there'll be people there that you can talk to, and but I'll stay with you. So for the whole first, I think it was probably the whole first month, I stayed the whole time. I had a name tag, and he and I were helping. That's the kind of the way we sort of broached it. And then slowly I would come and I would, Teresa was so good, she'd say, "Oh, I think you have a meeting later, don't you?" I'd say, "Yes, I do." Mm-hmm. And so I'd kind of sneak out. So that all worked out well.
Yeah, and it seems like Jim has adjusted well and really enjoys the program.
He really does. The funniest thing today was, it was about 9:15. Now I only live like 5 minutes. Well, I could walk here if I really wanted to. And at 9:45, he said, "Well, let's go." I said, "Well, we don't, it's not quite time yet. We have to kind of wait a little bit." "No, I'm ready. Let's go." And he was like going out the door.
That's great. So it's become part of his routine.
It has become
and part
of
yours.
his routine. Of course, he calls it going to school.
Mm-hmm.
It's, so and that's good for him, and he really has enjoyed it. Excuse me.
I've seen him during some of the social events they have, as well as musical programs and games that are played as well. And
yeah,
he really seems to engage.
Yeah, I think he does, and I will have to say that it's funny when they have music programs. He'll say, "Well, I don't know any of those songs." And I just have to say, we're Catholic, we don't know hymns because we didn't really grow up singing hymns. It was not a thing. It was, so he's not familiar with the hymns.
Right. Well, he may learn some new tunes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is so special about Memory Makers is they have really tried so hard to work with him. You know, he used to write columns for the newspaper, and they said, can you bring some of those in? We'll make copies. We'll make a little book. And sometimes when he's here, you know, they'll read one of his columns. It's just, you know, they've really reached out to him.
And I think it's special for all of us to read Jim's column and ask him what he was thinking at that time and what he was doing at that time. It's a window into who Jim is.
True.
What recommendations would you have for other caregivers or other people that might be in your situation or were in your situation a year or two ago?
Oh, I would definitely say, you know, give it a try. Memory Makers, true, it's a program that does have all different levels of people. So there are some who are, in worse situation than Jim, and there are some that are in less of a situation than Jim. Jim has aphasia, so it's hard for him to talk sometimes. He can't get his words out. But everyone is so understanding of the problems. So I would say this is one of the best things that you can possibly do, because as a caregiver, you need to have some time on your own, either to go grocery shopping, I just mostly work in the yard because it's hard to get out because, you know, he needs me and I don't want to be outside when he needs me. So it's just really a wonderful program.
That's great to hear it. And I have to say, it's been wonderful getting to know you and Jim, and one of the most special things that have happened to me since I've come to Oxford.
Oh, thank you, Keith. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Well, Leah, thank you for coming into Memory Makers and for sharing your experiences with us today.
I'm glad to be here, and I love Memory Makers, so anything positive that can come from this interview, I just want other people to know about this absolutely fabulous program.
Well, we appreciate it. And I have a few questions for you about your experiences and about your mother's, Pat's experiences here at Memory Makers.
Okay.
So what made you first think of Memory Makers as a place for care and respite?
Well, my mom has had dementia for a long time. So when she retired, she was looking for things to do. And as her experiences became smaller and smaller on the things that she could do, we were looking for purposeful activities for her to be able to do. And at the time, we were in the location on Heritage Drive, and my children were taking music from the center right next door. And so I would see the participants come in and out and in and out, and they were so happy and they were having such a great time. And so I just thought this would be a great program for my mother. And one of my friends had her husband on the waiting list there and then got him in. And so she was telling me about the program and what benefits it had been to her husband. And I knew that my mother would really benefit from the interactions that she would receive here. So.
And it feels like the timing of using a service like Memory Makers, which is an adult day program, is really critical to utilize that at the right time when you need it.
Right, and when we were probably one of the people that have benefited for a long, long time, because at the time when we came in, the program was full. We were at capacity, and so the university was doing a pilot program for the Friday only. So my mother came in with 1 day a week experience, and that just really struck her as perfect. And as we went through COVID and all the other things that went on, we had to change our plan, but it really has been a perfect experience for her.
Yeah. And how did, I know For some folks, the first day or introducing someone to a new program like Memory Makers can be a challenge. How did you go about introducing your mother to Memory Makers?
Well, that was something that really we had to think about. And because my mother had been in the nursing home and assisted living as a volunteer for years, so she went into the programs there and she gave devotions. So she went every Sunday or a couple of Sundays a month. And so I asked her, like, why don't we volunteer at Memory Makers and we will go in together. So I went in with her and she did a little program which I helped her. So she really just kind of did a little devotion and they loved it and she felt comfortable with it and saw what the program was like. I stayed with her and then she thought, well, I could do this. This would be fun for me to do. And she didn't need to do that devotion again or another time of doing anything else again, because I think that did put some pressure on her that she didn't need. But just saying, let's go do something for somebody else gave her that, okay, let's do that. And she did a great job, but she wanted to come in as just a participant after that. So
that's great. So you started with kind of appealing to her sense of purpose.
Yes.
And then she gradually just decided, I'll be a participant rather than.
And I know some participants don't want to come the whole day. They might want to come in for just a little bit here and there. And so, each person is going to want something different. My mom loves to be here. And so she looked forward to it from that time on. She wanted to come in every week at that point. It was just once a week.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember any special times at Memory Makers that stands out to you?
Well, lots of special times. Memory Makers loves to party, so they every special day, it could be Halloween, it could be Easter, it could be Valentine's Day, is all about a party. Now, people with dementia don't really have any time sense, so you could have a party anytime, and it wouldn't matter if it was in November and if you were celebrating Valentine's Day, they wouldn't care. But really, to have those set holidays, she just has so much fun. She's dressed up like pumpkins. We've had Christmas holiday things and birthdays. We brought cupcakes and things in, and we've had pizza parties here. There have just been so many little fun activities that they do, and she likes the art. She loves the music.
Yeah, I've noticed the programming here is very positive, very engaging. And even the shyest of people come alive with the programming that happens here at Memory Makers,
They do.
Especially the music.
Well, that's that sensory down on the other side of your brain. But when you come in the morning, they come in and they have little cupcakes or muffins and nuts, and they sit around and they talk, and it's just kind of like what you would do at home when you're having coffee with your spouse. It is the social interaction that they need. They need to keep those verbal skills going. And when you're at home with just your spouse or your one other person, you don't have that long conversation because they really can't carry on a long conversation anymore. But they love, between all of the participants, there's a lot of verbalization going on there that they need to stimulate their brain.
And it feels like friendships are made here, genuine friendships between participants and the staff. I know here at Memory Makers gets very, very close to the participants and family members.
I totally agree. I do not feel like my mother is just a participant. I feel like she is a very valued and loved family member here. So they've called and checked on her when she's not been well. They sent her flowers when she was in the hospital. So she is, they love her, and we feel that, and she feels that. So with dementia, they might not can say what they do, but the feelings are so expressed. So when she feels loved and safe, then she wants to be here.
Yeah, I think it's genuine. That would be the word I would use for it. What advice would you have for other family members and caregivers who might be in a similar position in terms of using Memory Makers?
Well, I would say don't wait, because the verbal skills, the social skills, the emotional skills, and the support that Memory Makers offers is so needed from the very beginning, as long as you can do it. And they have told us that we can keep her here even if she's wheelchair bound. So right now we use walkers occasionally, but just being here to have the camaraderie, and I mean, I can call the people and ask for advice. I have used the resources. There's a resource library. There's just a lot of resources here that are unknown in the community. And it's a long process of dementia, it can be. And we need to come together as a community to support one another, because unless you've lived as a caregiver, or unless you are living with somebody with a type of dementia, you don't really understand the stress that it can put on a family. And people here understand that because they're living it.
Right, and I think the respite component of adult day services, the break that it gives you as a caregiver, is so critical for you to continue on as a caregiver.
It is, and so my father is the main caregiver, and I'm there pretty much, several times a week, and for all appointments and everything. So I can call the doctor's office and say, my dad needs an appointment for this time, because we are in respite services, and if you can't schedule us during this time, then we're going to have to get a sitter to come in for my mom. And so the community has embraced that. They understand that this is a set amount of time that we have to support these individuals. And so it's been a fabulous program. My dad can go home and take a nap. He can go home and do groceries. Exercise is so important for a caregiver. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our loved one. If we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be fit to be able to take care of them.
I agree. Well, Leah, thank you for coming in, and thank you for sharing your experiences about Memory Makers. And I think I can speak for the staff here. We think the world of Pat, and we think the world of you.
Well, thank you. My mother looks forward to it every single day. And on the weekends when y'all are closed, she asks me, she gets up and gets dressed and says, I need to get ready to go to Memory Makers.
Well, that's a testament
yeah,
right
it is.
there.
It really is. So,
well, thank you.
thank you.
Well, Amy, I would like to thank you for coming in to share your experiences and your mother's experiences with Memory Makers. So if we could start off, what made you first decide that Memory Makers would be a place that you and your mother might use?
Well, she obviously has issues with memory and everything, and so we were told by a friend about Memory Makers, and so we initially came up here and talked to Teresa, and we were very impressed that they wanted to know about the individual, to get to know the person before they started, and we filled out the paperwork and everything, and they just wanted to know so they could get to know the person better, and were able to interact with them how they needed to.
Mm-hmm. And was care becoming a little bit too much for you at home, or did you need a break, that type of thing?
Well, we just felt like that she needed to be more involved and just active, and to stay, with the brain, just, using this as to keep her stimulated and not getting bored, and so we felt like it would be more beneficial for her to just be involved in something. So
yeah, I agree.
instead of just sitting at home and not doing anything.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do at home, and then
Exactly.
the television becomes the only
Monotonous.
yeah, it's the only interaction you have, which is not
Exactly.
good. So that's one of the keys to adult day services, is that it gets people out of the home and with other people and engaging other people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I know one of the challenges I think that people face is what is the first day going to look like, that type of thing. So how did you introduce your mom to Memory Makers?
Well, we first started back because we were skeptical that she may want to, do anything. And so we first introduced it to her as like a volunteer. Like she would, because she loved to help people and everything and be around people. So we said, Mom, well, why don't you just start, looking around. Let's look into some things that we could, get you to do to volunteer to help people. And she was all about that. And so then she started kind of doing that, and it's worked, and she's really enjoyed it. So.
That seems to be a common story of how folks introduce their parents or their spouse to memory makers. Of it's a volunteer activity and you can help others by being there. And that's true, I think.
Yes.
And then they become a participant and establish relationships with the staff and with other participants. Yeah. Do you feel like your mom has made friends here?
Oh yes, for sure. She loves it.
That's great.
She really does. Sometimes she's hesitant, like in the mornings when she gets up and she'll say she doesn't want to, and we're like coaxing her and telling her, oh, you know how much fun you have and everything, and then she goes on and comes on, and then by the end of the time she's having a great time.
That's good to hear.
So.
Are there any special moments or special times that you remember?
Yes. Her birthday was about a month ago, and she was able to celebrate that day, and the spotlight was on her, and they made the day fun for her. And we were able to get a cake and bring it up here, and it was kind of a surprise to her. So me and my brother came as well and sat with her and enjoyed cake with her, and the spotlight was on her, so that was pretty special.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a good example, kind of reflecting back to what you said before, of the person-centered approach that they take in Adult Day and here at Memory Makers. They really focus on the individual.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's a great special day. Another thing I think that people are sometimes surprised about is the family engagement, and how you're a part of the program too when you show up for a day or for an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and her sister comes with her a lot, and she, relies on her a lot. And they're most accepting of her as well. So.
And what are some of the benefits that you get from Memory Makers? I know respite, you get a break from caregiving.
Yes, well, like the music that they, bring people in and help keep the program going and everything. And she really loves the music, and that's a very big beneficial thing with the memory as well, because it helps stimulate the brain.
And the music's pretty magical here when you come in for a musical program, and
that's her favorite.
Yeah,
is the music.
The place really gets going when the music's playing, and we were talking about previously with some other folks about if Memory Makers and Adult Day, it's kind of hidden therapy. You don't think of it as therapy, but the music is so good for you, and then the exercise and the socialization, it's good for you without you even knowing that it's good for you.
Yes. The interaction, just staying active and all that is so beneficial to an individual.
I agree. Are there any things you would like to tell other family members or caregivers who might be going through the same situation that you are going through that would help?
Yes, we highly recommend Memory Makers. It's a very, very great program for an individual if you're needing that type of help.
I think a lot of times families start too late in terms of considering Adult Day and Memory Makers.
Yes, because at first we were like wondering if she would be accepting of it, and we just kind of jumped in and just started checking it out, and it was definitely beneficial for our family.
Yeah, that's great. I know that that your mother means a lot to the staff and the other participants here, and you do as well. So I just want to thank you for coming in and sharing your experiences about Memory Makers.
Thank you.
Well, Karen, I want to thank you for coming into Memory Makers today to share your experiences and your mom's experiences at Memory Makers. The first question I have for you is, what made you think of Memory Makers when you were considering care for your mother?
Well, my mom, just to give some background, my mom taught in various school systems around the state for 39 years. And there came a point at which she had been at home by herself. I lived at my home as well. But she had been at home during the day while I was working. And she had some issues that made it very clear that we had gotten to a point where she couldn't be at home by herself. And so then it becomes, well, where can she go? So Memory Makers at that point was one of the places that she could go and still remain at home, and where I would know that she was safe. And it actually allowed me, I think historically when we've talked to people about respite care, we think about, oh, the caregiver is going to be at home taking care of this person and just needs a break. Also, I'm speaking for those people who are caregivers and they have to work. So at the end of the day, I knew that at Memory Makers, my mom would be safe and supervised so that she wasn't endangered by being at home. Even though as a caregiver, I would, get her set up in the morning, come back and check on her at lunch, come back right after I got off work. There's a lot of stuff that can happen in between times, and so Memory Makers filled in at least a big chunk of that gap.
One of the challenges, I think, with Adult Day and with Memory Makers for some folks is the first day. How do you introduce someone to Memory Makers, and what was that like for you?
I will be honest with you, I thought about this question and I was like, I don't even remember how we introduced it. It was like, okay, you gotta go somewhere, but this is a fun place to come. So it's not just like warehousing older people. It's like there are activities and things to do. Actually, I will take this time to show my visual aid. This is a picture, I don't know if you can get it, of my mom participating at Memory Makers. You can see that they had things to do. So in this thing, they had just done some kind of crafty artwork. That's not my deal, so I don't know. But anyway, and then you can see that she's smiling for the camera. And so she enjoyed herself. I will say to African-American caregivers also, people of my mom's generation didn't grow up having equal contact with white people. So I was a little nervous when I first got put her in here as to whether people were going to be, sprinkling the N-word around or any of that kind of thing. But she was met from the other clients. She was met with none of that kind of thing. Obviously, I can't speak for every individual person, but from the staff, she got support. So it was just great to be able to take advantage of that.
So Karen, are there any specific times that you remember when your mom was here at Memory Makers that really stand out to you?
My favorite story of my mom at Memory Makers, there was a guy, no disrespect to this man's memory, but we used to nickname him Fat Elvis. For those of you who were around during that time frame, he used to work at Walmart. He was a Elvis impersonator. And one day they had like 1950s, I think rock around the block tonight kind of dance thing. And Fat Elvis was dancing with my mom and, doing some kind of like 50s dance or whatever. My mama showed out. It's like, it was wonderful to see her be able to do that because, of course, when you become somebody's mom, a lot of your individuality and your personhood kind of gets put on the back burner. And so I had never met dancing mama like that, but it's like Fat Elvis had to go on and sit down because my mama took it over. And there was another resident at that time who also, he really got into it. So it's like, you think you know people and you think you know them as their children, you think you know them at their current stage, but there's still so much in there to give and to be beneficial to the broader world. So that's like my favorite memory is when Fat Elvis had to sit down because my mama stole the show.
She outdanced the king.
Absolutely.
What advice would you have for other family members who may be in a similar situation as you and are struggling with finding appropriate care for their loved one?
I think my advice would be number one, trust your gut. You know when your loved one is in need of more services. Now, if you are in a position to, I'm saying from the working caregiver standpoint, if you are in a position to be able to provide some of that care, by all means, do whatever you have to do that's going to fit into your situation. But I think trust your gut, know when it's imperative that they receive, if they need more help than you can give them, then that's when you need to seek out that help. And the other thing I would say is about memory makers is that it's not cost prohibitive. And so I think that's one of the things that we are so grateful for, because even if, well, first of all, it's not cost prohibitive for the vast majority of people, but even if you need a little financial help, there are opportunities to get scholarships for this program. So I just think it's very important for people to not write memory makers off as, oh, that's something that's over there, that's something that's for a particular group where you have to have this much money. I think it's important to get, while people are still in a position where they can benefit from socializing and activity and something to do that's fun for them, take the fullest advantage of that.
And that's one of the challenges I think that we face with Adult Day specifically, is getting the word out about this program so that people know about it and can use it at the right time in the caregiving trajectory. Yeah.
And I think it's important to also realize, you know, my mom did pass away, but when she passed away, she was no longer in memory makers. So if you're dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia, you know, it is progressive. And so therefore, you know, enjoy this window of opportunity where your loved one can still benefit from good things going on in their lives, and you know, because there may come a day when that's not the case. So enjoy them while you can. Enjoy them when they're in the later stages as well, but it's a different type of enjoyment and a different type of thing you have to go through. So,
Karen, is there anything you'd like to add about memory makers or your experiences?
I think memory makers is a blessing to the broader community. I wish we keep hearing from people that they didn't know we existed, they didn't know we were out here. And so I think through word of mouth, I think through proper advertising, and hopefully this video will be helpful for somebody. But people should take full advantage of participating in the Memory Makers program, because it just adds some spice to life, you know. And it gives people, I think, who might be questioning what their purpose is, it gives them a purpose to get up in the morning and get ready and come out and do something enjoyable, and has the added benefit to the caregivers of either you know that that person is safe for that window of opportunity, or you're working so hard doing everything for that person that you need a break. And I really want to stress the care for caregivers, because I think a lot of people, you know, we see a lot of people who are spouses of dementia patients, or children or whatever, but you know, there's so much that you take on in terms of doing caregiving that it's just important for you to be able to get a break in whatever way you can, because it's a full-time 24/7 job once you choose to take it on.
Well, Karen, I really appreciate you coming in and taking the time to talk to us, and I appreciate your words to other caregivers who may be in a similar position, and helping us get the word out about what is the best kept secret in
The
Oxford.
best kept secret.
Not anymore. So,
All right.
thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much.